Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back in time to a world of floating gardens, bustling marketplaces, and an empire built on innovation and human sacrifice. Imagine yourself paddling a narrow canoe through a maze of canals, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. Brightly colored birds flit overhead, their calls echoing across the water. You see farmers tending to lush gardens that seem to defy gravity, floating serenely on the surface. This is Tenochtitlan, the heart of the Aztec Empire. You probably won't survive this in reality, but at least we can travel there safely tonight in our imaginations. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment below with your location and the local time, it's always cool to see where you're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You dip your paddle into the murky water, the canoe gliding silently past rows of Chinampas, these remarkable floating gardens. Each one is a meticulously crafted rectangle of woven reeds, layered with fertile mud dredged from the lakebed. These weren't just pretty decorations, they were the lifeblood of the Aztec capital, feeding a massive population with an incredible variety of crops. Think of it as the most intense community garden project ever, but on a scale that would make even the most dedicated urban farmer weep with envy. You watch as a farmer carefully transplants a seedling. Squash, beans, maize, tomatoes, all thrive in this unique environment. You can practically taste the sweetness of the freshly picked corn. Historians still argue whether the Aztecs invented the Chinampa system, or if they adapted it from earlier cultures in the region. Whatever the truth, they perfected it, turning a marshy wasteland into an agricultural powerhouse. The sheer ingenuity of it all is staggering. Each Chinampa is anchored to the lakebed by willow trees, their roots creating a natural, living foundation. The Aztecs were masters of engineering and adaptation. They weren't just conquerors, they were brilliant innovators who transformed their environment to suit their needs. As you drift further into the city, the sounds of Tenochtitlan grow louder. The air buzzes with activity. Merchants hawk their wares, priests chant prayers, and warriors practice their battle skills. You can smell the roasting meat, the sweet aroma of tamales, and the pungent scent of burning copal incense. You dock your canoe near the Great Temple, a towering pyramid that dominates the city skyline. It's an imposing structure, dedicated to the gods Huitzilopochtli, the god of war, and Tlaloc, the god of rain. You try not to think too much about what goes on at the top of those steps. Let's just say that human sacrifice was a pretty common practice, and you definitely don't want to be chosen as the guest of honor. Speaking of unpleasant realities, it's worth remembering that the Aztecs weren't exactly running a democracy. The emperor held absolute power, and society was rigidly hierarchical. If you were born a peasant, you were probably going to die a peasant. No rags to riches stories here. Though, to be fair, most societies back then weren't exactly paragons of equality. But let's not dwell on the dark side too much. Focus on the beauty and the ingenuity. The Aztecs were also skilled artisans, creating intricate jewelry, vibrant textiles, and stunning works of art. You spot a craftsman carefully carving a jade mask, his hands moving with practiced precision. The level of detail is breathtaking. You wander through the bustling marketplace, a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds. You see vendors selling everything from exotic feathers to precious stones to dried fish. You could probably get a pretty good deal on some obsidian blades, but considering your pacifist nature, you'd rather just stick to souvenir pottery. And maybe some chocolate. Because, yes, the Aztecs invented chocolate. Well, technically, they were drinking it as a bitter, spiced beverage, but still. You try to bargain for a colorful parrot feather, but the merchant just laughs in your face. He's probably seen tourists like you before. Ah well, you can't win them all. But you do manage to snag a delicious tamale, filled with savory meat and wrapped in a corn husk. It's surprisingly good. Historians still argue about the exact size of Tenochtitlan, but most agree that it was one of the largest cities in the world at the time, possibly even larger than London or Paris. Imagine that, a sprawling metropolis built on a lake, connected by canals and causeways. It was a truly remarkable achievement. You watch as a group of young men play a game of Ulamalisli, a ritual ball game played with a heavy rubber ball. It looks incredibly dangerous. Players can only use their hips, thighs, and elbows to hit the ball, and the goal is to get it through a stone ring. The stakes were high, and the losing team sometimes ended up as sacrifices. You definitely wouldn't want to sign up for that intramural sport. You notice a group of scribes meticulously recording information on long strips of bark paper. The Aztecs had a complex writing system, using glyphs to represent words and concepts. They kept detailed records of their history, their religion, and their economy. Sadly, much of this knowledge was lost when the Spanish arrived. But what remains is enough to fill libraries. As the sun begins to set, casting a golden glow over the city, you find yourself reflecting on the rise and fall of this incredible civilization. The Aztecs were fierce warriors, skilled engineers, and talented artists. They built a powerful empire in a challenging environment. But their reign was relatively short-lived, brought to an end by the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors in the 16th century. Some historians blame their quick downfall on internal strife, while others point to the devastating impact of European diseases. You consider the fact that even the most powerful empires are ultimately fragile. Time moves on, civilizations rise and fall, and even the most impressive achievements can be forgotten. It's a sobering thought, but it also makes you appreciate the beauty and the wonder of the present moment. Plus, they were defeated by smallpox, not by anything anyone did. But let's not end on a down note. Remember the innovation and resilience of the Aztec people. They transformed a challenging environment into a thriving metropolis, leaving behind a legacy that continues to fascinate us today. From their Chinampas to their temples to their chocolate, they gave the world a lot. And you got a fun trip to the 1500s. Alright, settle in, friend. Let's go way back. Back before the feathered serpent, before the pyramids, before basically everything you associate with the Aztecs. We're talking about the deep, primordial goo of Mesoamerican agriculture. Imagine yourself, if you will, not in your comfy chair, but knee-deep in a muddy field somewhere in what's now central Mexico, maybe around 7,000 years ago. The sun is beating down, insects are buzzing, and you're holding a really weird-looking plant. You squint at it. This ain't your average supermarket corn. In fact, it barely resembles corn at all. It's teosinte, the wild ancestor of maize. It has a tough, almost stone-like kernel, and it shatters easily. Delicious, right? Now, your job, and you do not get a dental plan for this, is to figure out how to make this thing edible, let alone a staple food. Good luck. This is where the magic begins. You and your fellow proto-farmers, through centuries of patient observation, experimentation, and probably a fair bit of accidental discovery, start to select for the traits you want. Bigger kernels, less shattering, softer husks. It's not exactly genetic engineering, but it's the dawn of something pretty revolutionary. You're essentially rewriting the genetic code of a plant, one generation at a time. And all without lab coats and fancy equipment. Just good old-fashioned, back pain, mostly. And you're not alone in this agricultural revolution. All across Mesoamerica, people are tinkering with plants. Squash, beans, avocados, tomatoes, the list goes on and on. These weren't just foods, they were the building blocks of civilization. They allowed people to settle down in one place, to form communities, to specialize in different tasks. No more wandering around chasing mammoths, though, let's be honest, mammoth chasing sounds kind of awesome. Agriculture meant surplus, and surplus meant, everything. Now, imagine this surplus. You've got extra corn, extra beans, extra squash. What do you do with it? You can't just leave it out in the sun. So you invent ways to store it, underground pits, elevated granaries. And then, naturally, you start trading it. Hey, I've got a mountain of corn. You got any obsidian? And just like that, you're an early capitalist. Okay, maybe not quite. But the seeds, pun intended, of complex societies are being sown. One key ingredient, literally, is the process of nixtamalization. You take that corn, boil it in an alkaline solution, usually made from lime or wood ash, and then let it soak. Sounds appetizing, doesn't it? But this simple step unlocked the nutritional potential of maize. It makes the niacin more bioavailable, meaning your body can actually use it, and it softens the kernels, making them easier to grind. Without nixtamalization, the whole Mesoamerican thing might never have taken off. Think about that next time you're enjoying a taco. You're basically thanking ancient chemists. Here's a mainstream historical fact for you: the development of maize agriculture is considered one of the most significant agricultural achievements in human history. It allowed for the rise of large populations and complex societies in Mesoamerica, laying the groundwork for the Olmecs, the Maya, the Teotihuacanos, and, of course, the Aztecs. But here's a quirky tidbit: some researchers believe that early Mesoamericans may have used hallucinogenic plants in their agricultural practices, perhaps to communicate with the spirits of the plants or to ensure a bountiful harvest. Imagine, your farmer's almanac included psychedelic guidance. Talk about organic farming. I'm just saying, maybe that's why some crops look so trippy. Of course, life wasn't all sunshine and alkaline-treated corn. Early farmers faced challenges galore. Droughts, floods, pests, diseases, you name it, they dealt with it. And they did it without the benefit of modern pesticides or irrigation systems. Their knowledge of the land, of the seasons, of the plants themselves, was their most valuable tool. They were master observers, constantly learning and adapting. And those adaptations led to some pretty ingenious agricultural techniques. One of the most famous is Chinampa agriculture, also known as floating gardens. You create artificial islands in shallow lakes by piling up mud, weeds, and decaying vegetation. These Chinampas are incredibly fertile and can support multiple harvests per year. It's basically hydroponics, but done with a whole lot more manual labor. Your back is already screaming, right? Speaking of labor, imagine the sheer amount of work involved in transforming the landscape. Terracing hillsides to create level fields, digging irrigation canals, clearing forests, it was a massive undertaking. And it required cooperation on a scale that's hard to fathom. Entire communities had to work together to build and maintain these agricultural systems. It's a testament to their organizational skills and their collective will. They were, in a way, urban planners who sculpted entire ecosystems to provide for themselves. Now, historians still argue whether the development of agriculture was a conscious choice or a gradual process driven by environmental pressures. Did early Mesoamericans intentionally set out to domesticate plants, or were they simply forced to adapt to changing conditions? Either way, the results were profound. Agriculture transformed the human experience in Mesoamerica, creating a new way of life that would eventually give rise to some of the most impressive civilizations the world has ever seen. But back to you, knee-deep in that muddy field. It's getting late. The sun is starting to set, casting long shadows across the landscape. You're tired, you're hungry, and you're covered in mud. But you've also got a handful of those strange, new kernels. You've spent the day weeding, watering, and protecting your little plot of land. You feel a sense of connection to the earth, to the plants, to the people around you. And you know, deep down, that you're a part of something bigger than yourself. It's the quiet dignity of the first farmers. And just when you think you're done for the day, bam! A rogue grasshopper leaps out of the vegetation, landing directly in your already meager portion of grub. Honestly, this day couldn't get any worse. Think of these early Mesoamerican farmers as the original foodies. They were passionate about their plants, experimenting with different varieties, developing new techniques, and sharing their knowledge with others. They were the pioneers of a new way of life, a way of life that would shape the destiny of an entire region. Their legacy lives on in every tortilla, every tamale, every bowl of pozole you eat. And that, my friend, is something to be grateful for. Now, let's not forget the crucial role of animals in this agricultural story. While Mesoamerica didn't have large domesticated animals like cattle or horses, they did have turkeys, dogs, and, in some areas, bees. Turkeys provided meat and feathers, dogs helped with hunting and guarding, and bees provided honey and wax. These animals were integrated into the agricultural system, providing valuable resources and services. And here's another mainstream historical fact: the Olmecs, considered the mother culture of Mesoamerica, relied heavily on agriculture to support their large population and complex society. They developed sophisticated irrigation systems and were skilled at cultivating maize, beans, and squash. Their agricultural innovations paved the way for later civilizations, including the Maya and the Aztecs. The Olmecs were basically the OGs of Mesoamerican agriculture. One somewhat fringe theory suggests that the decline of some Mesoamerican cities may have been due to agricultural mismanagement. Overfarming, deforestation, and soil erosion could have led to crop failures and food shortages, ultimately contributing to the collapse of these societies. It's a sobering reminder that even the most advanced civilizations are dependent on the health of their environment. Like, take care of your planet, you know. No pressure, though. So, as you finally drag yourself back to your little hut, caked in mud and dreaming of a good night's sleep, which you definitely won't get, thanks to the incessant buzzing of mosquitoes, remember this: you are part of a long and unbroken chain of farmers, stretching back thousands of years. You are connected to the earth, to the plants, to the people who came before you. And you are playing a vital role in feeding your community and building a civilization. Now get some rest. You've earned it. Besides, you've got a field to plow tomorrow. And by then, that grasshopper will probably be hungry again. Alright, settle in, friend. Let's drift back in time, way back, to a place that might sound like a sneeze if you're not careful: Lake Texcoco. Now, imagine a sprawling, shallow lake nestled high in the Valley of Mexico. It's not exactly the Caribbean. Think more murky water, alkaline salts clinging to everything, and the general vibe of a place where mosquitoes hold all the real estate. You trudge through the reedy shallows, the mud sucking at your sandals, or, well, your hypothetical sandals, since you're probably sitting comfortably in your chair right now. But imagine the mud. This isn't your typical idyllic lake scene. This is Lake Texcoco, the heart of the Aztec world, and it's about as welcoming as a tax audit. But hey, the Aztecs, also known as the Mexica, they weren't ones to shy away from a challenge. They saw opportunity where others saw, well, a giant salty bog. So, what was so darn special about this less than appealing body of water? Well, for starters, it was there. And in a region surrounded by mountains, arable land was precious. Lake Texcoco, despite its drawbacks, offered a unique solution. You see, the Aztecs were ingenious engineers. They developed a system of chinampas, or floating gardens, essentially creating artificial islands by piling mud, reeds, and decaying vegetation onto woven mats anchored to the lake bed. You're essentially farming on top of the water. Take that, dry land. Historians still argue whether the idea of chinampas was something that the Aztecs invented themselves, or whether they had simply improved on older practices from prior cultures. These chinampas became incredibly fertile, allowing the Aztecs to cultivate a wide variety of crops, like maize, beans, squash, and chilies. It was a brilliant solution to a challenging environment. So brilliant, in fact, that it sustained a massive population and helped fuel the growth of their empire. And hey, who needs a water view when you are the water view? But Lake Texcoco's influence didn't stop at agriculture. It was also a vital source of protein. The lake teemed with fish, amphibians, insects, and waterfowl. Picture yourself, if you will, wading through the shallows with a net, trying to catch something. Probably something slimy. But hey, protein is protein, right? And the Aztecs, nothing if not resourceful, even harvested algae, which they dried and turned into a kind of protein-rich cake. Algae cake. Doesn't exactly sound like a Michelin star dish, but hey, it kept the empire going. Speaking of which, did you know that some sources claim that the Aztecs actually ate axolotls? Those cute, little salamander-like creatures. I think I'd rather stick with the algae cake, thanks. The lake was also crucial for transportation. Canoes were the highways of the Aztec world, allowing people and goods to move easily between the various settlements around the lake. Imagine a bustling waterway filled with canoes laden with produce, pottery, and all sorts of other goods. It must have been quite a sight. A bit like the Amazon, but saltier. This connected the city-states around the lake, and this interconnectedness helped to forge a strong political and economic network. Now, it wasn't all sunshine and algae cakes, though. Lake Texcoco presented some serious challenges. The water was salty, making it unsuitable for drinking or irrigation. And flooding was a constant threat, especially during the rainy season. It can be difficult to imagine such a busy, rich, cultural center, living under the threat of constant flooding. The Aztecs, however, being the clever folks that they were, developed a number of ingenious engineering solutions to deal with these problems. One of the most impressive was the construction of dikes and causeways to control the flow of water and prevent flooding. The most famous of these was the Dike of Nezahualcóyotl, a massive structure that stretched for over 10 miles across the lake. This dike not only protected the city from floods, but it also helped to separate the freshwater springs from the salty water of the rest of the lake, providing a source of drinking water for the population. They also built aqueducts to bring fresh water from springs located outside the lake basin. These aqueducts were marvels of engineering, using gravity to transport water over long distances. This ensured that the city had a reliable supply of fresh water, even during the dry season. Imagine the sheer manpower it would have taken to build these structures, without the aid of modern machinery. It's truly mind-boggling. But even with all these ingenious solutions, Lake Texcoco remained a challenging environment. The Aztecs were constantly battling the forces of nature, and their survival depended on their ability to adapt and innovate. Their mastery of hydraulic engineering and agricultural techniques allowed them to thrive in a place that would have defeated most other civilizations. It's a testament to their resilience and ingenuity. And speaking of innovation, there's a somewhat peculiar theory floating around that the Aztecs used a form of acoustic levitation to move massive stones during construction. I know, it sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but some researchers claim to have found evidence of sonic resonance patterns on ancient Aztec sites. Mainstream historians, however, remain skeptical. I mean, it's fun to imagine, right? Imagine building a pyramid just by humming really loudly. It'd certainly make construction sites a lot more interesting. But the story of Lake Texcoco doesn't end with the Aztecs. The arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century marked a turning point in the history of the lake and the surrounding region. The Spanish, with their superior weaponry and unfamiliar diseases, quickly conquered the Aztec Empire. They set about draining the lake, believing it to be a source of disease and a hindrance to their plans for the region. The draining of Lake Texcoco had a profound impact on the environment and the people who lived there. The Chinampas, which had once been a source of life and prosperity, were gradually abandoned as the lake receded. The city of Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, was transformed into Mexico City, a sprawling urban center that bore little resemblance to its former glory. Over the centuries, the lake continued to shrink, and today, only a small remnant of it remains. The once vast expanse of water has been replaced by urban sprawl, agricultural fields, and industrial sites. The ecological consequences have been devastating, with the loss of biodiversity and the degradation of the surrounding environment. The story of Lake Texcoco is a cautionary tale about the impact of human activity on the environment. It's a reminder that even the most ingenious engineering solutions can have unintended consequences, and that we must be careful to protect the natural resources that sustain us. It's also a story about the resilience of the human spirit and the ability of people to adapt and overcome challenges. The Aztecs, despite the challenges posed by Lake Texcoco, created a thriving civilization that left an indelible mark on the world. And finally, did you know that Mexico City is sinking? It's true. Because the city was built on the soft, unstable soil of the former lake bed, it's been gradually sinking for centuries. In some areas, the city has sunk by as much as 30 feet. That's a lot of sinking. I guess you could say the Aztecs really built their empire on shaky ground, huh? Okay, I'll stop. It's time for me to sign off and tell you good night. No, wait, not yet, still have another 100 or so words to go. So, where were we? Ah yes, Lake Texcoco, a place of both wonder and hardship, a testament to human ingenuity and environmental change. The story of Lake Texcoco is a complex and multifaceted one, full of twists and turns, triumphs and tragedies. It's a story that continues to unfold, as we grapple with the challenges of urbanization, environmental degradation, and the legacy of the past. It's a story that reminds us of the importance of understanding our history and learning from our mistakes, so that we can build a more sustainable and equitable future for all. Maybe we can all try to be a little more like the Aztecs, resourceful, adaptable, and always ready to take on a challenge, even if it means eating algae cakes. Alright, settle in, friend. Let's talk Chinampas. You're probably picturing something vaguely Asian, maybe with pagodas and tiny umbrellas. But nope. We're headed to pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, specifically the Valley of Mexico. Think shimmering lakes, ancient civilizations, and the innovative agricultural technique of building floating gardens. Well, kind of. They're not actually floating. Let's get one thing straight before we get our hands dirty. We're not talking about some sort of pontoon raft with a vegetable patch plunked on top. No, Chinampas are more like elongated, rectangular artificial islands, constructed in shallow lake beds. So, forget the Titanic, picture something a bit more amphibious. Are you ready to get your hands dirty? I hope you're wearing your gardening gloves, because we're about to build our own Chinampa, virtually, of course. Though, if you happen to have a shallow lake bed nearby, be my guest. And maybe invite me over. First, find your site. Ideally, you'd be smack dab in the middle of one of the shallow lakes that once dominated the Valley of Mexico, like Lake Xochimilco. Nowadays, much of that area is, sadly, paved over. Progress, right? But back in the day, these lakes were the lifeblood of the Aztec civilization, providing water, food, and a convenient means of transportation. Now, imagine yourself wading into the murky water. It's probably a bit chilly, maybe teeming with unseen things that would prefer to stay unseen. Squish. That's the mud, the rich, fertile mud that's going to be the foundation of our, well, not-so-floating island. This mud, teeming with decayed organic matter, is the key ingredient. You see, the Aztecs were masters of soil engineering, and they understood the incredible potential of this lake bottom muck. It's like the world's best compost tea, but in solid form. I mean, it's like if you made coffee out of compost. I do not recommend it. Okay, so you found your spot. Next, you're going to need to mark out the boundaries of your future Chinampa. This is where things get a little bit like playing Minecraft, but with a lot more mud and a significantly lower resolution. You'll want to create a rectangular area, typically around 30 meters long and 2.5 meters wide. These dimensions weren't arbitrary, they were carefully chosen to maximize sunlight exposure and water access for the plants. Think of it as optimizing your in-game farm for peak efficiency. Now, for the fun part, digging. You and your team, because let's be honest, you're not building a Chinampa solo unless you're some kind of superhuman, start excavating the mud and vegetation from the marked out area. This is where the reeds and interwoven branches come in. As you dig, start creating a sort of fence or enclosure around the perimeter of your rectangle. This is where the willow trees come in. You'll be driving wooden stakes of willow and other water-resistant trees firmly into the lake bed, creating a sturdy framework. These stakes will eventually sprout roots, further reinforcing the Chinampa's structure and acting as a natural barrier against erosion. Clever, right? Nature doing your landscaping for you. With the stakes firmly in place, you begin weaving branches and reeds between them, creating a kind of wattle-and daub wall, only underwater. This enclosure is crucial for containing the precious mud and preventing it from washing away. Think of it as building a retaining wall, but with biodegradable materials and a distinct lack of power tools. It's all very rustic chic. Now for the layering. This is where the magic happens. You start filling the enclosure with alternating layers of mud, decaying vegetation, and aquatic plants. The mud, dredged up from the lake bottom, provides the nutrients, while the vegetation adds bulk and helps with drainage. You're basically creating a giant lasagna of soil and organic matter. But, without the cheese or marinara sauce. Although, I suppose you could add some. I'm kidding. Please don't put cheese in your Chinampa. Each layer is carefully compacted to create a solid, stable base. The top layer is usually a thick layer of pure mud, rich in nutrients and perfect for planting. This is your topsoil, the canvas upon which you'll paint your agricultural masterpiece. And this process is repeated until the Chinampa rises about a meter above the water level. Now, you have a raised platform of fertile soil, ready to be transformed into a productive garden. It's a bit like building a raised garden bed, but instead of wood, you're using the lake itself as your construction material. But wait, there's more. The edges of the Chinampa are often planted with willow trees. These trees, besides providing structural support, also help to prevent erosion and provide shade for the crops. They act like a living fence, protecting your precious island from the elements. Historians still argue whether these trees were originally planned for erosion control, or whether it was a happy accident they latched onto later. And finally, irrigation is a piece of cake, or rather, a piece of the lake. Because the Chinampa is surrounded by water, it's constantly being irrigated by capillary action. The water seeps up through the soil, keeping the plants consistently moist and happy. It's like having a self-watering garden bed, only on a grand scale. So there you have it. Your very own, virtually constructed Chinampa. Now, imagine hundreds, even thousands of these artificial islands stretching across the lake. That was the reality of the Valley of Mexico during the Aztec Empire. These floating gardens were incredibly productive, allowing the Aztecs to grow a wide variety of crops, including maize, beans, squash, tomatoes, and flowers. The constant supply of water and nutrients from the lake meant that Chinampas could be cultivated year-round, providing a reliable source of food for the ever-growing population of Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital. The Aztecs were able to produce multiple harvests per year, which contributed to the abundance of food in their society. It was a sustainable and efficient agricultural system that allowed them to thrive in a challenging environment. And here's the quirky bit. The Aztecs may have even raised axolotls, a type of salamander native to the Valley of Mexico, in the canals surrounding the Chinampas. Some theories suggest that these axolotls help to control pests and provide an additional source of protein. Now, I know what you're thinking. All this mudslinging sounds like a lot of hard work. And you're right, it was. Building and maintaining Chinampas required a significant amount of labor, but the rewards were well worth the effort. The Chinampa system not only provided food security but also had a positive impact on the environment. The Chinampas acted as natural filters, cleaning the water and providing habitat for a variety of aquatic species. They also helped to regulate the water level in the lakes, reducing the risk of flooding. It's kind of like the OG green infrastructure. Sadly, much of the Chinampa system has been lost over the centuries due to urbanization and the draining of the lakes. However, in some areas, like Xochimilco, efforts are being made to preserve and restore these ancient agricultural landscapes. So, next time you're feeling ambitious, maybe you'll consider building your own Chinampa. Or, just stick to your backyard garden. Whatever floats your, you get the idea. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go find a mud bath. Just kidding. But seriously, all this talk about mud has made me want to get my hands dirty. Okay, settle in, friend. Let's talk about Chinampas. Specifically, let's talk about what they were made of, because you can't exactly just wish a floating garden into existence, can you? I mean, you could try, but I'm thinking the results would be disappointing. Imagine you're there, standing on the edge of Lake Xochimilco, the sun warm on your face, a slight breeze carrying the scent of water lilies and, well, let's be honest, probably a little bit of decaying vegetation. It's a beautiful, almost otherworldly place. But you're not just there for the view. You're there to build something. Something incredible. Something floating. So, you trudge towards the water's edge, your bare feet sinking slightly into the muddy bank. You notice the abundance of plant life, reeds, water hyacinth, and all sorts of soggy green things thriving in the shallow water. These are your building blocks, my friend. Your secret weapon. The first thing you'd need is a sort of frame. Think of it like the skeleton of your floating garden. You'd gather reeds, tule reeds, specifically. These are long, sturdy plants that grow abundantly in the lake. You painstakingly weave them together, creating a large, rectangular raft. It's tough work, but think of it as a really, really relaxing arts and crafts session. Minus the glitter, hopefully. Getting glitter out of lake water is a nightmare. Now, before you start picturing a bunch of tiny, individual reed rafts bobbing aimlessly, it's important to remember that these were big. Like, really big. Some Chinampas were the size of small city blocks, so this wasn't exactly a weekend DIY project. You can just imagine the logistical challenge of coordinating all those reeds, all those people, all that mud. Speaking of mud. Okay, the reeds are your frame, but the real magic ingredient? Mud. Or, more specifically, the nutrient-rich sediment that accumulates at the bottom of the lake. This stuff is basically black gold for ancient farmers. You load it onto canoes, probably dugout canoes, carved from massive tree trunks, another impressive feat of engineering, by the way, and haul it back to your waiting reed raft. Now, imagine the scene, you're knee-deep in mud, the sun beating down, sweat dripping from your brow. You're shoveling this black, gooey substance onto the reed frame, carefully building layer upon layer. It's exhausting. It's messy. It probably smells interesting. But you know it's all worth it. You're building a fertile island, a floating paradise, a testament to human ingenuity, and a place to grow some seriously delicious corn. You see, this mud isn't just any mud. It's packed with decomposed organic matter, the remains of countless plants and animals that have lived and died in the lake. This makes it incredibly rich in nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, all the good stuff that plants crave. It's like giving your crops a supercharged fertilizer boost, only it's completely natural and sustainable. Take that, Monsanto. Once you've built up a substantial layer of mud on your reed frame, you start planting. First, you'd plant willow trees, ahujo trees, around the edges. These aren't just for decoration, although they do look pretty. Their roots grow down into the water, anchoring the Chinampa to the lake bed and preventing it from drifting away. They also help to stabilize the soil, preventing erosion. It's a win-win situation, really. Plus, if you get bored, you can carve little boats out of the fallen branches. I'm just saying. Then come the crops. Corn, beans, squash, tomatoes, peppers, amaranth, the list goes on. You carefully plant each seed, knowing that it will thrive in this rich, fertile environment. And because the Chinampa is constantly watered by the lake, you don't have to worry about drought. It's like having a self-irrigating garden. You're practically a farming genius. Now, here's where things get a little debated. Historians still argue whether Chinampas actually floated in the way we typically think of floating. You know, like a rubber ducky in a bathtub. Some argue that they were more like raised garden beds, permanently anchored to the lake bed. Others insist that they did indeed float, at least initially, until the roots of the willow trees grew down and secured them. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Maybe some Chinampas floated more than others. Maybe it depended on the size and depth of the lake. Maybe, well, we'll probably never know for sure. What we do know is that they were incredibly productive. Some estimates suggest that Chinampas could produce up to 7 crops per year, far more than traditional agriculture. This allowed the Aztecs to feed a large and growing population, transforming Tenochtitlan into a thriving metropolis. It's estimated that the Chinampa system provided as much as 2/3 of the food consumed in the city. Think about that. A floating garden feeding a huge city. Pretty impressive, right? But let's get back to the materials for a second. It wasn't just reeds and mud, you know. You also needed a whole host of other things to make a Chinampa work. Things like aquatic plants. You know, the kind that look like they're having a great time just existing. These plants help to bind the soil together and prevent erosion. They also provide a habitat for beneficial insects and microorganisms, which help to keep the soil healthy. It's all part of a complex and interconnected ecosystem. Each element playing its part. And then there were the Alalacatl. Now, I know what you're thinking, what in the world is an Alalacatl? Well, my friend, it's a type of mud that was used to reinforce the edges of the Chinampa. This mud was particularly rich in clay, which made it very strong and durable. It was like adding concrete to your floating garden. It helped to prevent the soil from washing away and kept the Chinampa from collapsing. Kind of like ancient Aztec rebar. Here's a slightly uncomfortable fact for you. Sometimes, to further stabilize the Chinampas, the Aztecs would use human hair. Yeah, you heard me right. Human hair. Apparently, it's incredibly strong and resistant to decomposition, so it made a great binding agent. Don't worry, though, it's not like they were shaving heads specifically for Chinampa construction. It was more of a resourceful use of existing resources. Just try not to think about it too much. Of course, you can't forget the canals. The Chinampas were built in a network of canals, which allowed farmers to easily transport their crops to market. The canals also provided a source of fresh water for irrigation and drinking. They were like the arteries of the Chinampa system, carrying life and sustenance to every corner of the city. Think of it as the Venice of the Aztec Empire, only with more corn and less gondolas. And now, a quick aside. Did you know that the Aztecs were incredibly skilled engineers? They built aqueducts, causeways, and temples that were the envy of the ancient world. And their Chinampa system was just one example of their ingenuity and resourcefulness. They were able to transform a swampy lake into a fertile agricultural landscape, providing food and sustenance for a huge population. They really were quite the impressive civilization. But back to our floating gardens. The construction of a Chinampa was a communal effort. It required the cooperation of many people, working together to achieve a common goal. It was a testament to the power of community and the importance of working together. Plus, building a Chinampa with your friends would probably be a lot more fun than building one by yourself. Just saying. Now, you might be wondering, are Chinampas still around today? And the answer is yes. Although, they're not quite as widespread as they once were. In the Xochimilco area, you can still see Chinampas being used to grow crops, although they are often smaller and less productive than their ancient counterparts. The modern Chinampas are a testament to the enduring legacy of the Aztec civilization. They are a reminder of the ingenuity and resourcefulness of the people who built them, and they offer a valuable lesson in sustainable agriculture. Plus, they're a pretty cool place to visit if you ever find yourself in Mexico City. So, the next time you're eating a delicious taco made with locally grown ingredients, take a moment to appreciate the Chinampas. They are a reminder of the ancient agricultural practices that have shaped our world, and they offer a glimpse into the ingenuity and resourcefulness of the Aztec civilization. And maybe, just maybe, they'll inspire you to build your own floating garden. Although, I would recommend starting small. A window box might be a good place to begin. You know, before you start hauling mud out of a lake. Baby steps, friend. Baby steps. Also, check for zoning regulations. I don't want you getting in trouble for building an unauthorized floating garden. That would be a real, rude awakening. Now, doesn't that just make you sleepy? Alright, settle in, friend. Find that comfy spot, maybe grab a warm drink. Today we're wading, not through muddy fields, but through the fascinating world of the Chinampa. You trudge slowly, ankle deep in the fertile muck. The air hangs heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and burgeoning life. Dragonflies, like shimmering emerald jewels, dance across your vision. The sun, a hazy disk behind the morning mist, warms your face. You feel the pull of the earth beneath your feet, a constant reminder that you are standing on something truly special, a floating garden, a testament to human ingenuity. This isn't just any patch of land, you see. This is a Chinampa, an agricultural marvel created by the Aztecs, or, to be precise, their predecessors, the people of the Valley of Mexico. Think of it as an artificial island, constructed in the shallow waters of lakes like Xochimilco. And before you ask, no, it doesn't actually float. The name might be a bit misleading, but we'll get to that. You reach out, brushing your fingers against a vibrant green stalk of corn. It's taller than you are, practically bursting with life. Around you, the Chinampa teems with activity. Squash vines sprawl across the raised beds, their broad leaves unfurling like velvet carpets. Bright red chiles dangle temptingly from their branches, promising a fiery kick. Tomatoes, plump and juicy, ripen under the watchful eye of the sun. It's quite the edible oasis. The whole thing just feels natural, doesn't it? Like it's always been here. But that's the beauty of a Chinampa. It's a perfect example of sustainable agriculture, a self-regulating ecosystem that provides sustenance while also preserving the environment. You wouldn't guess it, considering the chaos happening on my desk right now. But how does it all work? Well, imagine you're an Aztec engineer, sleeves rolled up, ready to get muddy. You start by staking out a rectangular area in the shallow lake. Then, you weave a fence-like structure of interwoven branches and reeds, creating a sort of basket. Now, the fun part, filling it in. You dredge up mud from the lake bed, a rich, black sludge teeming with nutrients. This muck, as it were, is the lifeblood of the Chinampa. You pile it into the enclosure, layer after layer, until you've built up a raised platform above the water level. Finally, you plant trees around the perimeter. Willows are a popular choice, to secure the structure and prevent erosion. And voila! You have your very own Chinampa. You could charge rent now if you wanted. I wouldn't. Now, remember I said it doesn't actually float. That's because these artificial islands are anchored to the lake bed by the roots of those trees. The interwoven roots act like underground anchors, holding the Chinampa firmly in place. So, while it might look like it's floating, it's actually more like a very stable, very fertile, and very delicious extension of the land. The real magic, though, lies beneath the surface. You peer over the edge of the Chinampa, trying to get a glimpse of the water below. It's murky, but you can just make out the movement of tiny creatures. This is where the symbiotic relationship really takes hold. The Chinampa acts like a giant sponge, constantly drawing up water from the lake. This water, rich in nutrients from decaying organic matter, irrigates the crops from below. It's like a natural hydroponic system, providing a constant supply of food and water to the plants. No wonder they're growing so well. But it's not just about the water. The mud itself is a treasure trove of life. Microorganisms, worms, and other tiny creatures break down organic matter, releasing nutrients that the plants can absorb. Fish and amphibians find refuge in the shallow waters surrounding the Chinampa, feeding on algae and insects and further enriching the ecosystem with their deposits. It's all connected, a delicate dance of give and take. Fun fact, these Chinampas were so productive, they were a key factor in supporting the large population of Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, which was built on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. Imagine feeding an entire city from floating gardens. It's quite the feat of engineering and agricultural prowess. Historians still argue whether the Chinampa system alone was sufficient to support the Aztec Empire. Another interesting, albeit slightly macabre, tidbit: the Aztecs were known to use human skulls as fertilizer on their Chinampas. It's a practice that might make your skin crawl, but it highlights the Aztecs' understanding of the importance of returning nutrients to the soil. Okay, maybe that wasn't that fun. As you stand there, surrounded by the vibrant life of the Chinampa, you begin to appreciate the ingenuity and sustainability of this ancient agricultural system. It's a far cry from the industrial-scale farming of today, with its reliance on synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. The Chinampa is a reminder that we can work with nature, not against it, to produce food in a way that is both productive and environmentally friendly. You notice a farmer, weathered and strong, tending to his crops. He smiles at you, a warm and welcoming gesture. He offers you a ripe tomato, still warm from the sun. You bite into it, and the burst of flavor is incredible. It's a taste of the Chinampa, a taste of history, a taste of sustainable agriculture. The farmer then proceeds to explain to you how they still practice this method of agriculture to this day. Modern Chinampas are often smaller than their Aztec counterparts, but the principles remain the same. Farmers continue to dredge mud from the canals, build raised beds, and cultivate a variety of crops. They also use traditional methods of pest control, such as companion planting and introducing beneficial insects. He points to a patch of marigolds planted alongside the tomatoes. The scent repels pests, he explains. It's a simple solution, but it works. And it's a lot better for the environment than spraying chemicals. The Chinampa is more than just a farm. It's a way of life. It's a connection to the past, a commitment to the future, and a celebration of the natural world. I mean, the guy is using marigolds to repel pests. It's like something out of a hippie commune, but it actually works. The farmer's own dedication is quite impressive. He goes out of his way to preserve what he has. As you're about to leave, you notice the farmer is standing near one of the waterways surrounding the Chinampa. He's looking down with an expression of worry. He points out the invasive species that are threatening to take over the ecosystem, disrupting the delicate balance of the Chinampa. It's a reminder that even the most sustainable systems are vulnerable to external threats. You thank the farmer for his hospitality and for sharing his knowledge. As you walk away, you carry with you a newfound appreciation for the Chinampa and the people who work to preserve it. It's a place where the past and the present come together, where nature and culture intertwine, and where the future of agriculture may just be taking root. I should note, however, that the future of this place is also up for debate, with some of the canals shrinking due to modern agriculture methods. One of the truly cool quirks is that axolotl, an adorable, salamander-like creature that's native to the Xochimilco Lake system. These little guys are critically endangered, but they play an important role in the Chinampa ecosystem, feeding on insects and helping to keep the water clean. They're basically the underwater custodians of the floating gardens. Now that's a job title. Okay, friend, settle in. Let's keep wandering through this watery world, this fascinating landscape of floating gardens and ancient innovation. You're still waiting, remember, knee-deep in this meticulously crafted ecosystem. The sun is warm on your face, a gentle breeze whispers secrets through the reeds, and the air hums with the industrious buzzing of, well, hopefully bees. Maybe just gnats. Let's be real, it's probably gnats. But still, idyllic, right? Now, take a look around you, really look. Forget the gnats for a second. What do you see? It's more than just mud and water, isn't it? It's life. And a whole heck of a lot of it. We're talking about Chinampas, remember? These artificial islands, these raised beds of fertile muck, are teeming with plant life. They are, in essence, ancient Mesoamerican garden beds. And not just any plants. We're talking a diverse, vibrant array of crops. More than your local farmer's market, probably. Okay, maybe not more than the really bougie one with the imported truffles, but still, a lot. You see, the beauty of the Chinampa system, besides its sheer ingenuity and sustainable nature, is its incredible productivity. The constant supply of nutrient-rich water from the surrounding canals acts like a perpetual fertilizer drip, allowing farmers to cultivate a wide variety of plants year-round. It's like having a subscription box, but instead of artisanal cheese, it's, well, sustenance. So, what kind of sustenance are we talking about? Let's start with the staples, the unsung heroes of the Mesoamerican diet: corn, beans, and squash. The Three Sisters, as they're often called, were the cornerstone of many indigenous diets, and for good reason. They complement each other perfectly, both in terms of nutrition and cultivation. The corn provides a stalk for the beans to climb, the beans fix nitrogen in the soil, enriching it for the squash, and the squash provides ground cover, preventing weeds and conserving moisture. It's like a tiny, self-sufficient agricultural commune. Isn't nature neat? You're probably thinking, corn, beans, and squash, sounds a bit bland, doesn't it? And sure, maybe on their own, they might not set your taste buds dancing a fiery salsa. But think of the possibilities. Tortillas, tamales, stews, soups, endless variations limited only by your imagination, and access to chili peppers, obviously. Plus, let's be honest, what isn't improved by a little cheese and sour cream? Now, let's move on to something a little more colorful. Think tomatoes, for instance. Plump, juicy tomatoes, bursting with flavor. Sure, they might not be the exact same varieties we know and love today, heirlooms are all the rage now, right? But they were definitely around, adding a splash of vibrant red to the Chinampa landscape. And speaking of color, how about chili peppers? From mild and sweet to scorching hot, these little firecrackers were an essential ingredient in Mesoamerican cuisine. They added not only flavor but also a vital source of vitamins. Plus, they're thought to have medicinal properties. So, basically, you're doing yourself a favor by adding a little spice to your life. Unless you're one of those people who thinks ketchup is spicy. Then, maybe just stick to the tomatoes. As you continue your trudge, you might notice the unmistakable scent of herbs wafting through the air. Epazote, for example, a fragrant herb often used in Mexican cooking, was likely cultivated on Chinampas. It's said to help with digestion, which is always a plus after a hearty meal of corn, beans, and squash. And maybe some mystery meat tacos from that questionable street vendor. Just kidding. Mostly. But the Chinampas weren't just about sustenance. They were also about beauty. Flowers, too, were cultivated, adding a touch of color and fragrance to the landscape. Think of marigolds, with their vibrant orange and yellow blooms, used in ceremonies and offerings. Imagine the sight, these floating gardens awash in color, a testament to the ingenuity and artistry of the people who created them. Okay, before we get too carried away with the poetic imagery, let's talk about something a little less romantic: algae. Specifically, spirulina. You know, that green stuff that's all the rage in smoothies and health food stores these days. Well, guess what? It was also cultivated on Chinampas. Rich in protein and nutrients, it was an important part of the Mesoamerican diet. So, basically, the ancient Aztecs were ahead of the curve on the whole superfood trend. Take that, kale. Now, you're probably wondering how exactly they managed to cultivate all these different crops in such a relatively small space. Well, that's where the magic of the Chinampa system really shines. The raised beds, constructed from layers of mud, decaying vegetation, and aquatic plants, provided a fertile and well-drained growing medium. The canals, besides providing a constant source of irrigation, also served as a natural transportation system, allowing farmers to easily move crops and materials around. It's like a mini Venice, but with more vegetables and less gondola traffic. Here's a mainstream historical fact for you: the Aztecs, who rose to prominence in the Valley of Mexico in the 14th and 15th centuries, heavily relied on the Chinampa system to feed their growing population. The Chinampas allowed them to produce a surplus of food, which in turn supported their complex society and allowed them to build a vast empire. So, basically, without Chinampas, there might not have been an Aztec empire as we know it. Pretty impressive, huh? But here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some scholars believe that the Chinampa system may have also been used for, wait for it, aquaculture. That's right, raising fish. The canals surrounding the Chinampas could have been stocked with fish, providing an additional source of protein for the population. It's like a 2-for-1 deal, gardens and fish. Talk about maximizing your resources. Historians still argue whether the decline of the Chinampa system after the Spanish conquest was due primarily to disease, forced labor, or changes in land ownership. The introduction of European agricultural practices and crops also played a role, as did the draining of Lake Texcoco, which drastically altered the environment. Whatever the exact cause, the decline of the Chinampas was a tragedy, leading to food shortages and economic hardship for many indigenous communities. But the story of the Chinampas doesn't end there. In recent years, there has been a renewed interest in this ancient agricultural technique, as people search for more sustainable and environmentally friendly ways to grow food. Chinampas are being revived in some parts of Mexico, offering a potential solution to food security and environmental challenges. You know, it's pretty awesome when you think about it. An ancient system, developed centuries ago, holding the key to a more sustainable future. It's like finding a hidden treasure, a forgotten wisdom that can help us navigate the challenges of the modern world. And all it takes is a little mud, water, and a whole lot of ingenuity. Now, as you continue your walk along these fascinating floating gardens, take a moment to appreciate the incredible diversity of crops that thrive here. Think of the corn, beans, and squash, the tomatoes and chili peppers, the herbs and flowers, all contributing to a vibrant and sustainable ecosystem. Think of the ingenuity and hard work of the people who created and maintained these Chinampas, transforming a swampy lake into a fertile garden. Maybe you'll even be inspired to start your own mini Chinampa in your backyard. Okay, maybe not. But you can definitely appreciate the beauty and wisdom of this ancient agricultural system. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start thinking about where your food comes from and how it's grown. Because, let's face it, sometimes we all need a little reminder of the connection between ourselves and the land. And if all else fails, you can always just go to the farmer's market. Just watch out for the gnats. Right, settle in, settle in. Let's get comfy. Imagine a soft blanket, maybe a cup of chamomile tea, or, you know, tequila, whatever gets you in the mood for some serious agricultural knowledge. Today, we're diving deep, like, really deep, into the fascinating world of Chinampas. Okay, so you trudge, barefoot and probably mosquito-bitten, through the shallow waters of Lake Xochimilco, south of what is now Mexico City. The sun is beating down, seriously, bring sunscreen, and the air hangs thick and humid, smelling of rich earth and blooming water lilies. You're surrounded by a network of rectangular plots, floating gardens shimmering in the light. These, my friend, are the legendary Chinampas, also known as floating gardens, although, spoiler alert, they don't actually float like a raft. It's more like land reclamation, but with way more impressive results. You feel the squish of the mud between your toes. It's incredibly fertile, a rich, black sludge that's basically agricultural gold. This isn't just any mud, it's a carefully crafted mixture of lake sediment, decaying vegetation, and human, let's just say, organic matter, all meticulously layered together. Think of it as the ultimate compost heap, but one that provides the foundation for an entire ecosystem. You kneel, grabbing a handful. Honestly, it's kinda gross, but also kinda beautiful, like that time you found a really perfectly formed mushroom growing out of a pile of old leaves. Anyway, back to the nutrient-rich soil. The specific farming practices employed on Chinampas are nothing short of genius. You start by creating a rectangular frame, typically using interwoven reeds and wooden stakes. This frame is then filled with the muck dredged up from the lakebed. Layer upon layer, you carefully build up the platform, reinforcing it with more reeds and interwoven branches to prevent erosion. It's like building a delicious, albeit muddy, lasagna of soil and plant matter. You tamp it down, making a firm base for planting. Around the edges of the Chinampas, you'll often find ahijo trees, also known as willow trees. These aren't just pretty decorations, they're crucial for stabilizing the artificial islands. Their roots grow deep into the mud, anchoring the Chinampa and preventing it from washing away during floods. Smart, right? It's like a natural retaining wall, only way cooler and more eco-friendly than concrete. They also provide shade, which, trust me, you'll appreciate under the scorching Mexican sun. Plus, their branches can be used for construction and fuel. Talk about multitasking. The real magic happens with the planting. The Aztecs, known for their agricultural prowess, perfected a system of intensive cultivation on these Chinampas. You wouldn't just haphazardly throw some seeds around, you carefully select and plant crops in succession, maximizing yields and ensuring a constant supply of food. Corn, beans, squash, tomatoes, chili peppers, amaranth, a veritable rainbow of deliciousness thrived in these floating gardens. And let's not forget the flowers. Oh, the flowers. Chinampas were also used to cultivate stunning displays of orchids, dahlias, and other exotic blooms, destined for temples, ceremonies, and probably just to make someone's day a little brighter. A single Chinampa could yield up to 7 crops a year. That's a lot of guacamole. One common technique involved creating seedbeds, small plots of land where seedlings were nurtured until they were strong enough to be transplanted onto the main Chinampa. You carefully tend to these baby plants, providing them with just the right amount of water and sunlight. It's like having a tiny plant nursery, except instead of being in a greenhouse, you're surrounded by a shimmering lake. These carefully nurtured seedlings get a better start, making them hardier when they're moved. Water management is also key. The Chinampas are surrounded by canals, which provide a constant source of fresh water. This allows for efficient irrigation and also helps to regulate the temperature of the soil. The water also acts as a natural fertilizer, carrying nutrients from the lake to the plants. It's a self-sustaining system that's been working for centuries. I mean, talk about efficiency. Who needs bottled water when you've got a whole lake at your disposal? And the best part? No water bill, well, probably not. I don't know how the Aztecs handled water bills. Now, here's a quirky tidbit for you. The Aztecs also used Chinampas to raise axolotls, those adorable, perpetually smiling salamanders. These little guys were considered a delicacy and were also used in traditional medicine. Can you imagine? Farming both vegetables and amphibians on the same plot of land? Talk about maximizing space. I wonder if they had a special axolotl-friendly fertilizer. Historians still argue whether the Chinampa system was a purely Aztec invention or if it evolved from earlier agricultural practices in the region. It's definitely a hot topic at academic conferences, I bet. Regardless of its origins, the Aztecs perfected the technique, transforming the shallow lakes surrounding their capital city, Tenochtitlan, into a thriving agricultural powerhouse. In fact, some believe that the Chinampa system was crucial to supporting the massive population of Tenochtitlan, which was one of the largest cities in the world at the time. Basically, the Chinampas were the ancient world's equivalent of a super-efficient, organic, and visually stunning farm. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Chinampa system is its sustainability. Unlike modern industrial agriculture, which can deplete the soil and damage the environment, Chinampas are designed to work in harmony with nature. The constant replenishment of nutrients from the lake, the use of natural fertilizers, and the careful management of water resources all contribute to a system that can be sustained for generations. So, we probably ought to pay attention to that. Of course, maintaining a Chinampa is no walk in the park. You have to constantly dredge the canals to prevent them from silting up, repair the frames, and weed the plots. And let's not forget the constant threat of floods and pests. But the rewards are well worth the effort. Not only do you get a bountiful harvest, but you also contribute to a system that's both environmentally sustainable and culturally significant. And here's a mainstream historical fact for you: the Chinampa system was a key factor in the rise of the Aztec Empire. By providing a reliable source of food, the Chinampas allowed the Aztecs to support a large population, build a powerful army, and expand their influence throughout the region. Food security, baby. It's the foundation of civilization. So, next time you're complaining about the price of avocados, remember the Aztecs and their ingenious floating gardens. Today, you can still see Chinampas in the Xochimilco area, though many have been lost to urbanization and pollution. Efforts are underway to preserve and restore these ancient agricultural systems, both as a way to promote sustainable farming practices and to protect a valuable part of Mexico's cultural heritage. Seriously, go check it out. It's way cooler than looking at more pictures of cats online. Unless those cats are farming on Chinampas. Now that's something I'd watch. So there you have it, a glimpse into the wonderful world of Chinampas. A testament to the ingenuity and resourcefulness of the ancient Aztecs, these floating gardens are a reminder that sustainable agriculture is not just a trendy buzzword, but a time-tested solution to some of the world's most pressing challenges. And hey, who knows, maybe one day you'll have your own Chinampa, growing delicious organic vegetables and communing with nature. Just remember to bring your mosquito repellent. And maybe a poncho. In case it rains. And don't forget to tip your local axolotl farmer. They work hard for their smiles. Now, wasn't that relaxing? Almost like drifting off to sleep on a gently rocking Chinampa. Sweet dreams, or, productive agricultural thoughts. Whichever works for you. Alright, hey there, settle in, grab your favorite, thing, to fidget with, and let's just drift on down to the Chinampas, shall we? You're wading, already, ankle deep in the shallows of Lake Xochimilco. Feel that cool mud squish between your toes. Good stuff. And isn't that morning mist just chef's kiss? You trudge forward, the water deepening slightly, until you reach the edge of a Chinampa. Imagine, for a moment, that you're not just some 21st century person trying to understand ancient farming techniques. Instead, you're, but transported back to the Aztec Empire, probably sometime around the 15th century. Hope you brushed up on your Nahuatl. Now, you might be thinking, hey, these Chinampas are pretty ingenious, who came up with this idea anyway? Well, buckle up Buttercup, because that's where the plot thickens. Historians still argue whether the Chinampa system was an Aztec invention or if it evolved from earlier practices employed by other cultures in the Valley of Mexico. The Xochimilca people, who predate the Aztecs in that region, are often credited with pioneering the technique, which the Aztecs then refined and scaled up to feed their burgeoning empire. It's kinda like arguing over who invented pizza. Everyone had a flatbread with toppings at some point, right? But only some cultures really slapped some toppings onto a dough disc. But enough about the intellectual property, let's talk labor. You don't think these floating gardens just popped into existence, do you? Nope. Constructing and maintaining Chinampas was backbreaking work, involving a whole lot of people and a surprisingly sophisticated understanding of engineering and agriculture. You watch as a group of workers approaches, their movements rhythmic and practiced. Men, women, and even older children participated, each playing a crucial role in the ongoing cycle of Chinampa cultivation. The men often handled the heavier tasks, like dredging mud from the lakebed. This nutrient-rich sludge, known as muck, was the lifeblood of the Chinampas. Think of it as the ultimate organic fertilizer, lake-bottom goodness, teeming with microorganisms and essential minerals. They'd load it into canoes and transport it to the Chinampas, carefully layering it to build up the raised platforms. Women, meanwhile, often focused on planting, weeding, and harvesting. They possessed an intimate knowledge of the crops, maize, beans, squash, tomatoes, chili peppers, understanding their growing cycles and specific needs. They were the horticulturalists of the Aztec world, nurturing the plants from seed to table. You see a woman carefully tending to a row of seedlings, her fingers nimble and precise. It's almost meditative, the way she moves. Kinda makes you want to quit your desk job and just garden, doesn't it? Then again, maybe not. Back pain is a real bummer. Older children, too, contributed to the effort, assisting with tasks like scaring away birds, transporting materials, and helping with the lighter aspects of planting and weeding. It was a family affair, a community endeavor, deeply ingrained in the fabric of Aztec society. Imagine the family reunions. Pass the episode, Auntie. And speaking of family, that brings up another key point. Chinampa plots were often family-owned and passed down through generations. This created a strong sense of stewardship and responsibility. You're not just farming, you're maintaining your family's legacy, ensuring their survival and prosperity. No pressure. Organization was key to the success of the Chinampa system. While there wasn't necessarily a centralized Chinampa management office, there were likely local leaders or elders who oversaw the distribution of resources and coordinated labor efforts. Think of them as the neighborhood watch, but for floating gardens. They would have been responsible for ensuring that everyone had access to the necessary materials, like reeds and stakes for constructing the Chinampa borders, and that the irrigation system was functioning properly. Here's a slightly quirky tidbit. Some historians believe that the Aztecs even employed a form of crop rotation on the Chinampas, alternating different crops to maintain soil fertility and prevent the buildup of pests. It's not just about throwing some seeds in the mud and hoping for the best. It's a complex system based on centuries of observation and experimentation. Smart cookies, those Aztecs. Now, a little more on that soil fertility. You see that network of canals crisscrossing the Chinampas? Those weren't just for transportation, they were also crucial for irrigation and drainage. The canals allowed the farmers to control the water level in the Chinampas, ensuring that the plants received the optimal amount of moisture. And, perhaps even more importantly, the canals facilitated the circulation of nutrient-rich water, replenishing the soil and preventing it from becoming depleted. It's like a giant, floating hydroponic system, powered by the sun and the lake's natural ecosystem. How cool is that? It's also likely that the canals served as a breeding ground for fish and other aquatic creatures, which provided an additional source of protein for the Chinampa farmers. Sustainable agriculture at its finest, my friends. The societal implications of the Chinampa system were far-reaching. It not only provided a reliable source of food for the growing Aztec population, but it also fostered a sense of community and cooperation. The construction and maintenance of the Chinampas required a collective effort, bringing people together to work towards a common goal. This, in turn, strengthened social bonds and reinforced the importance of reciprocity and mutual support. And here's a mainstream historical fact to chew on: the Chinampa system was so productive that it allowed the Aztecs to support a large, densely populated city, Tenochtitlan, which was located on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. Without the Chinampas, it's unlikely that Tenochtitlan could have grown to become the sprawling metropolis that it was. The city was basically sitting atop a giant salad bar, and the Aztecs were happily munching away. Now, you might be wondering, were there any downsides to all this Chinampa labor? Well, let's be real, any form of agriculture involves hard work and potential risks. The Chinampa farmers were exposed to the elements, vulnerable to diseases, and subject to the whims of nature. Floods, droughts, and pest infestations could all wreak havoc on the Chinampa crops, leading to food shortages and hardship. It was not all sunshine and amaranth, shall we say. And while the Chinampa system was generally equitable, it's also likely that there were some inequalities in terms of land ownership and access to resources. Some families may have controlled larger or more productive plots of land than others, leading to disparities in wealth and social status. Plus, imagine the arguments about Chinampa boundaries. Hey, that's my muck you're dredging. Awkward silence. The labor was arduous, the hours were long, and the rewards were not always guaranteed. But the Chinampa farmers persevered, driven by their ingenuity, their resilience, and their deep connection to the land. They were the backbone of the Aztec economy, the unsung heroes of a remarkable agricultural achievement. So, next time you're enjoying a fresh tomato or a spicy chili pepper, take a moment to appreciate the legacy of the Chinampa farmers, who toiled in the mud to feed a civilization. You step back onto the shore, the mud still clinging to your toes. The sun is higher now, burning off the morning mist, revealing the full extent of the Chinampa landscape. It's a testament to human ingenuity and the power of collective effort. And, just maybe, you have gained a sliver of appreciation for the people who built and maintained these floating gardens, the farmers who transformed a lake into a life-sustaining oasis. Plus now you know where the best Aztec garden parties were. Alright, that's it for today, I think. Now, shoo. Go get some sleep. You've earned it. And don't forget to wash your feet. Alright, settle in, friend. Let's get comfy. Maybe grab a warm blanket and a cup of chamomile tea. We're about to float down the canals of ancient Mesoamerica and explore the fascinating world of Chinampas, those ingenious floating gardens of the Aztec. And trust me, once you understand their importance, you'll never look at a head of lettuce the same way again. Imagine yourself. It's early morning in the Valley of Mexico. A soft mist hangs in the air, clinging to the surface of Lake Texcoco. You trudge along a narrow, muddy path, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming water lilies. The sun, a hazy orange orb, is just beginning to peek over the distant mountains, painting the water in shimmering golds and pinks. You hear the rhythmic splash of paddles as canoes glide past, laden with fresh produce. These aren't just ordinary boats, mind you, they're like the Ubers of the Aztec world, delivering nature's bounty straight to the heart of Tenochtitlan. And what are they harvesting? Ah, that's where the magic of the Chinampas comes in. You see, these aren't just any gardens, they're human-made islands, floating on the surface of the lake like giant, verdant rafts. You reach out and touch the rich, dark soil, feeling its cool, damp texture. It's almost unbelievably fertile, teeming with life. You might even spot a tiny frog hopping amongst the rows of corn and beans. Don't worry, it's probably just doing its civic duty, snacking on pesky insects. The process of creating these artificial plots was really quite fascinating. First, you'd weave together a framework of reeds and branches, forming a sort of giant basket. Then, you'd dredge up mud and decaying vegetation from the lake bed and pile it onto the platform, creating a rich, fertile soil. Finally, you'd anchor the Chinampa in place using stakes and trees planted along the edges, creating a stable, productive garden. It was back-breaking work, to be sure, but the rewards were well worth the effort. In fact, some Chinampas were so stable that families built their homes right on them. Talk about living off the land, literally. The Aztecs, or Mexica as they called themselves, were relative newcomers to the Valley of Mexico. When they arrived in the 13th century, they found the area already populated by established city-states. They were, to put it mildly, not exactly welcomed with open arms. So, lacking prime real estate, they had to get creative. And creative they got. And these gardens, these Chinampas, weren't just a clever workaround, they were the foundation of the Aztec economy. Think of them as the Silicon Valley of their day, a hub of innovation and productivity that fueled the growth of their empire. These floating fields allowed the Aztecs to produce vast quantities of food, far more than they could have grown on the limited land available. They cultivated corn, beans, squash, tomatoes, chili peppers, and a whole host of other crops, providing sustenance for the growing population of Tenochtitlan, which by the time of the Spanish conquest, was one of the largest cities in the world. Basically, these gardens were so important they were the Aztecs' bread and butter. Or, more accurately, their corn and beans. The Chinampas weren't just about quantity, though, they also produced high-quality food. The constant moisture and rich soil created ideal growing conditions, allowing farmers to harvest multiple crops each year. This abundance of food not only sustained the population but also freed up labor for other activities, such as construction, warfare, and the arts. Imagine trying to build a sprawling metropolis when everyone is hangry all the time. Not pretty. But here's a quirky little tidbit for you: the Aztecs even used human waste as fertilizer on their Chinampas. Yes, you heard that right. They understood that human manure was rich in nutrients and could significantly boost crop yields. It may sound gross to us, but it was a practical and sustainable solution, a testament to their ingenuity and resourcefulness. It really puts our modern obsession with composting into perspective, doesn't it? And speaking of quirky, they also grew flowers. Not just for food, but for beauty and religious ceremonies. I guess you could say, they made sure to stop and smell the roses, or, the marigolds. Now, you might be thinking, okay, these Chinampas sound pretty great, but surely there were some downsides. And you'd be right. Managing the water levels was a constant challenge. Too much water, and the Chinampas would become waterlogged, potentially destroying the crops. Too little water, and the soil would dry out, reducing fertility. The Aztecs developed a complex system of canals and dikes to control the water flow, but it required constant maintenance and vigilance. It wasn't all floating down the river, if you get my drift. The importance of Chinampas extended far beyond mere food production. They played a vital role in the social structure of Aztec society. Land ownership was often tied to Chinampa cultivation, and families passed down their plots from generation to generation. This created a strong sense of community and fostered a deep connection to the land. It also meant that your social standing was quite literally rooted in your ability to grow stuff. The Chinampas also served as a kind of social safety net. In times of famine or hardship, the Chinampa farmers could provide food to those in need, ensuring the survival of the community. They became, in essence, not just agricultural producers, but guardians of social stability. I like to imagine them as the kindly old grandmothers of the Aztec world, always ready with a warm tortilla and a comforting word. Historians still argue whether the Chinampas were primarily owned and managed by individual families or by the state. Some evidence suggests that the Aztec government played a significant role in regulating Chinampa agriculture, overseeing the construction and maintenance of canals and dikes. Other evidence points to a more decentralized system, with families having considerable autonomy over their plots. It's a scholarly ping-pong match that continues to this day. Regardless of the exact ownership structure, it's clear that the Chinampas were deeply intertwined with the religious beliefs of the Aztecs. They saw the Chinampas as a gift from the gods, a sacred space where humans and nature could collaborate to create abundance. Religious ceremonies were often held on the Chinampas, honoring the deities of agriculture and fertility. You can almost picture them, chanting prayers as they carefully transplanted seedlings, asking for the blessings of rain and sunshine. Now, flash forward to the present day. Many of the original Chinampas have disappeared, replaced by urban sprawl and modern agriculture. But in some parts of the Valley of Mexico, particularly in the Xochimilco area, you can still find remnants of this ancient agricultural system. These remaining Chinampas are not only a living testament to the ingenuity of the Aztecs but also a valuable source of fresh produce for the city of Mexico City. Visiting Xochimilco is like stepping back in time. You can rent a colorful trajinera, a traditional flat-bottomed boat, and glide through the canals, admiring the lush vegetation and the vibrant culture of the Chinampa farmers. You might even encounter a floating mariachi band, serenading you with traditional Mexican music. It's an experience that's both beautiful and thought-provoking, a reminder of the enduring legacy of the Aztec civilization. The story of the Chinampas is a story of innovation, resilience, and a deep connection to the natural world. It's a story that reminds us that even in the face of adversity, humans can find creative solutions to their problems. And it's a story that challenges us to think differently about our own relationship with food and the environment. After all, who knows? Maybe one day, we'll all be growing our own food on floating gardens. Well, I certainly hope so. It would definitely make grocery shopping a lot more interesting. So, next time you bite into a juicy tomato or a crisp cucumber, take a moment to appreciate the legacy of the Chinampas and the ingenuity of the Aztecs. They may be long gone, but their floating gardens continue to inspire us to this day. And with that, my friend, I think it's time to wrap up our little journey through the canals of the Aztec world. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do. Until next time, may your gardens be bountiful and your waters be calm. Alright, settle in, friend. Let's get comfy. Imagine the year is, let's say 1500. You're arriving in Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, and honestly, the first thing that hits you is the water. You're surrounded by it. Lake Texcoco stretches out as far as you can see, shimmering under the intense Mexican sun. The air is thick with humidity, and the calls of water birds echo across the vast expanse. Now, you might be thinking, lake? So what? But trust me, this wasn't just any old lake. This lake defined the Aztec civilization. It was their source of life, their highway, their defense, and, occasionally, their biggest headache. And controlling it was an ongoing battle. You're wading through the shallows, the mud squishing between your toes. Sorry about that, hope you wore waterproof sandals. You see them now, rising majestically from the water, the Chinampas. Floating gardens, some call them. And while that sounds all romantic and whimsical, like something out of a fairy tale, they are also intensely practical. Think of them like super fertile, artificial islands made of interwoven reeds, mud, and decaying vegetation. You see, the Aztecs were surrounded by water, but not necessarily usable water. Lake Texcoco was salty and prone to flooding. Not exactly ideal for drinking or growing crops, is it? That's where the Chinampas come in. You watch as a farmer effortlessly paddles his canoe between these verdant rectangles, tending to his crops. Corn, beans, squash, tomatoes, a vibrant tapestry of life flourishing in the middle of a lake. It's seriously impressive. Like watching Bob Ross paint a landscape, but instead of a brush it's a shovel and the canvas is a bunch of lake gunk. These weren't just random patches of floating dirt, though. They were carefully engineered ecosystems. The nutrient-rich mud from the bottom of the lake was dredged up and used as fertilizer, constantly replenishing the soil. The water surrounding the Chinampas provided a constant source of irrigation. And the roots of the plants helped to stabilize the islands, preventing them from simply drifting away. It's a genius bit of engineering, really. Although, I bet whoever had to dredge that mud had a slightly less romantic view of the whole thing. Historians still argue whether the Chinampas were truly floating in the way we might imagine. Some believe they were primarily anchored to the lake bed by willow trees and other plants, essentially creating artificial land extensions. Either way, they were a remarkably effective way to expand the agricultural land available to the Aztecs and to feed a rapidly growing population. Think of it, they were basically creating land out of thin air, or, lake muck. Now that's what I call innovation. But the Chinampas were only one piece of the puzzle. Lake Texcoco was a capricious mistress, prone to devastating floods. To control the water, the Aztecs built an extensive system of dikes, causeways, and aqueducts. The most famous of these was the Dike of Nezahualcóyotl, a massive structure that stretched for miles across the lake, separating the freshwater springs from the brackish water, and protecting the city from floods. It was a monumental undertaking, requiring the labor of thousands of workers. Can you imagine the construction meetings? Okay, team, we need to build a dike, across the entire lake. Good luck selling that PowerPoint presentation. You're now standing on one of the causeways, feeling the cool breeze coming off the lake. You can see the remains of the dike in the distance, a testament to the Aztecs' engineering prowess. It's a humbling experience, realizing the scale of what they accomplished. And they did it all without modern machinery. I mean, you can't even get my Roomba to navigate a slightly uneven rug. But even with all their ingenuity, the Aztecs couldn't completely control the lake. Major floods still occurred, causing widespread damage and disrupting the city's food supply. It was a constant struggle, a never-ending battle against the forces of nature. And it's a struggle that resonates even today, as we grapple with the challenges of climate change and rising sea levels. Now, here's a slightly weirder fact for you. some historians believe that the Aztecs may have also used specialized, highly trained ducks to help control algae blooms in the canals around the Chinampas. Apparently, these weren't just any ordinary ducks. They were specifically bred for their algae-eating abilities, and they were meticulously managed by trained handlers. Think of them as the Aztec equivalent of, well, I don't know, like algae-eating robots or something. It's probably an exaggeration, but the image of a team of highly skilled duck wranglers herding algae-munching waterfowl across Lake Texcoco is just too good to ignore. You watch a modern-day farmer tending to his Chinampa, carrying on a tradition that has lasted for centuries. He's using the same techniques, the same tools, as his ancestors did. It's a living testament to the ingenuity and resilience of the Aztec people. Although, he probably has better insect repellent. The system wasn't perfect, of course. The Chinampas, while incredibly productive, required a lot of labor and constant maintenance. The dikes and causeways needed to be constantly repaired. And the water quality was always a concern. But despite these challenges, the Aztecs were able to create a thriving civilization in the middle of a lake. Now, let's talk a little bit about the long-term consequences of all this water management. When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, they were initially amazed by the beauty and sophistication of Tenochtitlan. But they also saw the lake as an obstacle. They began to drain it, believing it would make the city more manageable and easier to control. You can imagine how that went. This decision, though well-intentioned at the time, or, at least, convenient for them, had devastating consequences. The draining of the lake led to the destruction of the Chinampas, the loss of valuable agricultural land, and the creation of chronic water shortages. Mexico City, built on the ruins of Tenochtitlan, has been plagued by water-related problems ever since, as the city constantly sinks into the emptied lakebed. It's a cautionary tale, really. A reminder that even the most impressive engineering feats can have unintended consequences, especially when they disrupt the delicate balance of nature. And that sometimes, the best solution is to work with nature, not against it. You are now walking through modern-day Mexico City. It's bustling, chaotic, vibrant, and sinking. You can see the evidence of the lake's absence everywhere, the cracked sidewalks, the leaning buildings, the constant struggle to find enough water. Historians still debate the extent to which the Aztecs' water management practices contributed to their downfall. Some argue that their reliance on Chinampas made them vulnerable to droughts and other environmental changes. Others point to the political and social tensions within the Aztec Empire as the primary cause of their demise. The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in between. But one thing is certain, the story of the Aztecs and Lake Texcoco is a story of both triumph and tragedy. It's a story of human ingenuity and environmental destruction. And it's a story that continues to resonate today, as we face our own challenges in managing water resources and adapting to a changing climate. You stand for a moment, contemplating the legacy of the Aztecs. They were masters of their environment, able to create a flourishing civilization in the middle of a seemingly inhospitable landscape. But they were also ultimately undone by their own success. It's a sobering thought. And now, as the sun begins to set over the vast expanse of the former Lake Texcoco, it's time to bid you farewell. I hope you enjoyed our little journey into the world of Aztec water management. Maybe you'll even think twice next time you turn on the tap. Or, next time you see a duck. Don't underestimate those algae-munching machines. But before you go, let me leave you with one last, slightly absurd thought. Imagine if the Aztecs had invented the water park. I mean, with all that water and all that engineering skill, they could have created the ultimate aquatic playground. The Tenochtitlan tidal wave, the Chinampa chute, the Montezuma's lazy river. Okay, maybe I'm getting carried away. Okay, now it's sleepy time. Good night, sweet water engineers. Okay, settle in, friend. Let's sink into the squishy, wonderful world of Chinampas, floating gardens of ancient ingenuity, still very much alive and kicking in modern Mexico. You probably think of pyramids and conquistadors when you picture this part of the world, right? Fair enough, but there's so much more to it than just crumbling empires and historical dramas. And it's a story that continues to unfold, even as we speak, or rather, as I speak and you, well, listen. Imagine this, you're drifting down the canals of Xochimilco, just south of Mexico City. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth, blossoming water lilies, and a hint of, is that roasting corn? It probably is. You can hear the gentle lapping of water against the sides of a trajinera, one of those brightly colored, flat-bottomed boats. Mariachi music might be drifting from a nearby vessel, a cheerful, almost mournful tune carried on the breeze. You're surrounded by a vibrant green tapestry, a seemingly endless network of canals crisscrossing rectangular plots of land. This isn't some forgotten corner of history, no sir, this is a living, breathing agricultural system that dates back centuries, the Chinampas. You lean closer to the water, peering into its murky depths. You see movement, tiny silver flashes of fish darting amongst the submerged roots of aquatic plants. Frogs croak their rhythmic melodies, and the occasional dragonfly buzzes past your ear. It's a symphony of life, all sustained by this intricate web of water and earth. This, my friend, is where the magic happens. This is where the Chinampas work their quiet, unassuming miracles. Now, let's get a little historical for a moment. The Aztec, or Mexica, as they preferred to be called, were the masterminds behind this incredible system. They arrived in the Valley of Mexico in the 13th century, finding themselves in a land already populated by other groups. Lake Texcoco, while providing a source of water, wasn't exactly ideal farmland. But the Aztecs, resourceful as they were, weren't about to let a little thing like a swamp stand in their way. So, they did what any self-respecting civilization would do, they started building islands. Floating islands, to be precise. They dredged up mud and vegetation from the lake bed, layering it onto woven mats made from reeds and branches. These artificial islands were then anchored to the lake floor with stakes and willow trees. Over time, the willows took root, creating a stable foundation for the Chinampas. Sneaky, right? It's basically the world's oldest, most sustainable form of land reclamation. And a lot cheaper than building a giant seawall in Miami. But here's the quirky bit, some historians believe that the idea for Chinampas might have been borrowed from earlier Mesoamerican cultures, predating the Aztecs. It's kind of like finding out your favorite band covered a song from a band you've never heard of. The Aztecs definitely perfected the technique and scaled it up to an industrial level, but the seed of the idea, so to speak, might have come from somewhere else. Imagine that, the Aztecs, borrowing ideas. The audacity. You might be wondering, though, how effective these floating gardens actually were. Well, let me tell you, they were incredibly productive. The nutrient-rich mud from the lake, known as muck, provided a constant source of fertilizer. The surrounding water regulated the temperature, protecting the crops from frost and drought. And the canals provided easy access for irrigation and transportation. It was, in essence, a perfectly balanced ecosystem, a sustainable agricultural powerhouse. The Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, modern-day Mexico City, was largely fed by the bounty of the Chinampas. Imagine the sheer scale of it, a massive city sustained by these floating gardens. It's kind of mind-blowing. You begin to notice how each Chinampa is slightly different. Some are meticulously maintained, bursting with vibrant flowers, lush vegetables, and carefully tended rows of corn. Others seem a bit more rustic, shall we say. Maybe they're overgrown with weeds, or perhaps they're simply lying fallow, patiently waiting for their turn in the cycle of cultivation. It's all part of the rhythm of the land, a dance between nature and humanity. Now, let's fast forward a few centuries. The Spanish arrived, conquered the Aztecs, drained much of Lake Texcoco, and, well, you know the rest of the story. But even with all the changes that swept through the Valley of Mexico, the Chinampas persisted. They were a resilient system, deeply ingrained in the culture and the landscape. And they still are. Today, you can still find Chinampas being actively cultivated in Xochimilco. Farmers, Often families who have been working the land for generations, continue to grow a variety of crops, corn, beans, squash, tomatoes, peppers, and a whole host of other fruits and vegetables. They're using the same techniques that their ancestors developed centuries ago, adapted to modern needs and challenges. You might even see some modern innovations creeping in. Perhaps a farmer is using a small motorboat to transport his harvest, or maybe he's experimenting with new, drought-resistant varieties of crops. The Chinampas are not frozen in time, they're evolving, adapting, and continuing to provide a vital source of food and livelihood for the local community. But things aren't all sunshine and water lilies. The Chinampas face a number of threats in the modern world. Urban sprawl, pollution, and the increasing demand for water are all putting pressure on this fragile ecosystem. Some Chinampas have been abandoned, left to crumble and decay. Others have been converted into housing or other development projects. It's a constant struggle to balance the needs of a growing city with the preservation of this unique cultural and agricultural heritage. Here's a quirky little detail for you. Chinampas have been proposed as a potential solution to food security challenges in other parts of the world. Think about it, a sustainable, high-yield agricultural system that can be adapted to different environments. It's like a secret weapon in the fight against hunger. They've even been experimented with in places like urban gardens in Chicago. Talk about a historical throwback. The ecological importance of the Chinampas is also undeniable. They act as a natural filtration system, cleaning the water and providing habitat for a wide variety of plants and animals. They help to regulate the local climate, reducing the risk of flooding and erosion. And they provide a valuable green space in an increasingly urbanized landscape. The Chinampas are not just about food, they're about biodiversity, sustainability, and the delicate balance between humans and the environment. As you continue your journey down the canals, you see a group of schoolchildren being shown the Chinampas. Their teacher is pointing out the different plants, explaining the history of the system, and emphasizing the importance of preserving this cultural heritage. It's a reminder that the future of the Chinampas rests in the hands of the next generation. Historians still argue whether the Chinampas can truly be considered a model for sustainable agriculture on a larger scale. Can this ancient system be adapted to meet the challenges of feeding a growing global population? Can it be replicated in other environments with different climates and soil conditions? These are important questions, and there are no easy answers. One of the main challenges is the labor-intensive nature of Chinampa farming. It requires a lot of hard work to maintain the canals, build the seedbeds, and harvest the crops. In a world where mechanization and automation are increasingly prevalent, the Chinampas might seem like an anachronism. But there's also a growing recognition of the value of traditional farming practices. Many people are becoming more interested in locally sourced food, sustainable agriculture, and the preservation of cultural heritage. The Chinampas offer a compelling example of how these values can be integrated into a working agricultural system. You might even see restaurants in Mexico City advertising Chinampa grown produce on their menus. It's a sign that the Chinampas are gaining recognition for their quality and sustainability. People are starting to appreciate the connection between the food they eat and the land it comes from. And here's a light joke for you. Did you know that Chinampas are so fertile, they're basically the Tinder profiles of the agricultural world? Everyone wants a piece. As the sun begins to set, casting a golden glow over the canals, you reflect on what you've seen. The Chinampas are a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of the human spirit. They're a reminder that we can live in harmony with nature, creating sustainable systems that provide for our needs without depleting the Earth's resources. And they're a symbol of hope for the future, a glimpse of a world where food security and environmental sustainability are not mutually exclusive goals. One last quirky fact before we drift off: some Chinampa farmers use a type of algae called spirulina as a natural fertilizer. This nutrient-rich algae helps to boost the growth of their crops and provides a valuable source of protein for the local community. It's like a superfood for both the plants and the people. One more light joke, because why not? Why did the Chinampa farmer refuse to use modern pesticides? Because he preferred to keep things organically floating. And finally, a debate that seems to never end. Historians still argue over the exact techniques the Aztecs used to construct and maintain the Chinampas. Were they using sophisticated engineering principles, or were they simply relying on trial and error and generations of accumulated knowledge? The answer, as always, probably lies somewhere in between. So, as you slowly float back to shore, the sounds of the city begin to fade in the distance. Remember the Chinampas. Remember the ingenuity, the resilience, the sheer tenacity of the people who have kept this incredible system alive for centuries. And remember that even in the face of modern challenges, the spirit of the Chinampas continues to float on, a testament to the enduring power of human innovation and the enduring connection between people and the land. And one final light joke. What did the corn say to the Chinampa farmer? You're outstanding in your field, literally. Alright, wanderer, let's keep our virtual boots moving. The sun is, well, wherever the sun virtually is for you, it's probably doing something. Maybe shining. Maybe aggressively hiding behind clouds. Whatever it's doing, we need to talk about the looming shadows hanging over these amazing floating gardens, these Chinampas. Because, surprise, surprise, nothing this beautiful and ingenious gets to exist without facing a barrage of existential threats. You didn't think we were just going to admire pretty flowers and talk about ancient poop, did you? That's cute. So, you're wading, in your mind, of course, through the canals. The water is, surprisingly clear today. Maybe someone upstream had the decency to not dump a whole bunch of stuff in it. But the clarity belies a deeper, more insidious problem. Water pollution. Yes, that old chestnut. Mexico City, you see, is a behemoth, a sprawling metropolis of millions, and all those millions of people. Well, they produce waste. And unfortunately, not all of that waste finds its way to the appropriate treatment facilities. Some of it leaches into the groundwater, which then contaminates the canals that feed the Chinampas. You can almost taste the irony, can't you? These gardens, originally designed to purify water and provide sustenance, are now struggling against the very thing they were meant to combat. Think of it like this: you're trying to grow organic tomatoes, but your neighbor keeps spraying their lawn with enough pesticide to kill a small dinosaur. Not exactly ideal, is it? The plants absorb the toxins, and suddenly, your organic tomatoes are glowing with a faint, radioactive green hue. Okay, maybe not radioactive green. But you get the idea. Now, you might be thinking, well, surely the government is doing something about this, right? And, sometimes, there are efforts to improve sewage treatment and to regulate industrial discharge. But progress is slow, hampered by bureaucracy, funding shortages, and the sheer scale of the problem. It's like trying to mop up a tidal wave with a teaspoon. Good intentions, questionable effectiveness. And speaking of slow progress, did you know that Lake Xochimilco, the heart of the Chinampa system, is all that remains of a vast network of lakes that once covered the Valley of Mexico? The Aztecs built their entire empire on this lacustrine environment. Canals crisscrossed the valley, facilitating trade, transportation, and agriculture. But after the Spanish conquest, the Spanish drained much of the lake system, viewing it as a swampy hindrance to their European sensibilities. A little like replacing a priceless original painting with a paint-by-numbers kit you picked up at the dollar store, isn't it? That's not even the quirky tidbit. The quirky tidbit is this: some researchers believe that certain types of water snails found in the Xochimilco canals possess unique enzymes that can break down pollutants. Think of them as tiny, shelled superheroes, silently battling the toxic tide. It's like nature's own little cleanup crew, albeit a very, very slow-moving one. Historians still argue whether the Spanish deliberately intended to destroy the Aztec water management system as a means of dismantling their power, or whether it was simply a consequence of their misunderstanding of the local environment. Regardless, the result was the same: a dramatic shrinking of the lake and a serious threat to the Chinampas. But water pollution isn't the only villain in this story. Urban sprawl is another major culprit. Mexico City is growing, ever outward, like a tenacious vine consuming everything in its path. And guess what's often in the path of that growth? You guessed it, Chinampas. Developers see the land as prime real estate, ripe for building apartments, shopping malls, and, well, you get the picture. The economic incentives to convert Chinampas into concrete jungles are often too strong to resist. It's the classic tale of progress versus preservation, with preservation often losing out to the allure of cold, hard cash. Imagine trying to convince someone to preserve a field of wildflowers when they could build a profitable parking lot on it. It's an uphill battle, to say the least. And sadly, many Chinampas have already been lost to the relentless march of urban development. They've been paved over, filled in, and transformed into something else. Something less vibrant, less alive, less Chinampa-y. I'm sensing a collective sigh among us all, aren't you? Now, here's something a little off the beaten path for you. Legend has it that the Chinampas are protected by ancient water spirits. These spirits, known as Awoks, are said to dwell in the canals and lakes, guarding the Chinampas from harm. Some believe that respecting the traditions and rituals associated with the Awoks is essential for the continued health and prosperity of the Chinampas. So, maybe offering a little something to the water on your way out of the garden wouldn't hurt, just in case. Then, adding insult to injury, there's the issue of climate change. Rising temperatures, altered rainfall patterns, and increased frequency of extreme weather events are all putting additional strain on the Chinampa system. The plants are more susceptible to disease, the water levels fluctuate unpredictably, and the whole delicate ecosystem is thrown out of whack. It's like trying to maintain a perfectly balanced ecosystem inside a bouncy castle during an earthquake. Fun analogy. We all know about the greenhouse effect, trapping gases in the atmosphere. Did you know that Sir John Tyndall, the Irish physicist, first proved that carbon dioxide was a greenhouse gas in 1859? Not exactly cheerful news in the context of our current predicament, is it? The quirky tidbit? There is a rare species of axolotl, a type of salamander, that is native to the Xochimilco area. These little guys are critically endangered, partly due to habitat loss and pollution. They also have the remarkable ability to regenerate lost limbs. So, if a developer chops off a chunk of the Chinampa, maybe the axolotls can just grow it back. Wishful thinking, perhaps. Now, historians still argue whether the Aztecs fully understood the long-term environmental consequences of their agricultural practices. Did they foresee the potential for overexploitation of resources, or were they simply focused on meeting the immediate needs of their growing population? It's a question that continues to fascinate and divide scholars. But all is not lost. Despite the daunting challenges, there are dedicated individuals and organizations working tirelessly to preserve the Chinampas. Farmers are adopting sustainable agricultural practices, researchers are developing innovative solutions to combat pollution, and activists are raising awareness about the importance of protecting this unique cultural and ecological heritage. It's like a David and Goliath story, with the Chinampas playing the role of David, and the forces of destruction playing the role of, well, you get the idea. These preservation efforts range from promoting ecotourism to supporting local farmers who are committed to traditional Chinampa agriculture. There are even initiatives to restore degraded Chinampas and to reintroduce native plants and animals to the ecosystem. It's a long and arduous process, but every little bit helps. Sort of like trying to teach a cat to fetch. It's probably not going to be easy, but every successful fetch is a victory worth celebrating. You know, there's something deeply inspiring about seeing people fighting for something they believe in. It reminds you that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, hope can still bloom. Like a tiny sunflower pushing its way through a crack in the pavement. And speaking of blooming, did you know that the Aztecs used Chinampas not only for growing food, but also for cultivating flowers for religious ceremonies and festivals? Imagine the vibrant colors and intoxicating fragrances that must have filled the air during those celebrations. It's a reminder that the Chinampas are not just agricultural landscapes, they are also places of beauty, spirituality, and cultural significance. A fringe tidbit, some believe that the Chinampas are located on a ley line, a supposed alignment of ancient sites and natural landmarks that possess mystical energy. According to this theory, the Chinampas are a place of heightened spiritual power, where the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds is thin. Okay, I'll be honest, I have no idea if there's any truth to that. But it's a fun thought, isn't it? And historians still argue whether the Chinampas represent a truly sustainable agricultural system, or whether they are simply a clever adaptation to a specific set of environmental conditions. Can the Chinampa model be replicated elsewhere, or is it unique to the Valley of Mexico? It's a question that continues to be debated and researched. So, my friend, as you virtually step out of the canals, I hope you carry with you a newfound appreciation for the Chinampas and the challenges they face. They are a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and the enduring power of nature. And perhaps, with a little bit of luck, and a lot of hard work, these amazing floating gardens will continue to flourish for generations to come. Now, if you don't mind, I think I'm going to go find a Chinampa-grown tomato. It sounds absolutely delicious. Okay, settle in, grab your herbal tea, and let's meander through some ancient wisdom. Today we're talking Chinampas, those floating gardens of the Aztecs. Yeah, floating gardens. Imagine that. You're probably thinking, floating? Seriously? How does that even work? I know, right? It sounds like something straight out of a fantasy novel. But trust me, it's real, and it's packed with sustainability lessons that we can totally use today. So, picture this. You're gently paddling a canoe through the canals of Xochimilco, just south of Mexico City. The air is thick with the scent of water lilies and damp earth. The sun is warm on your face, and the only sounds are the gentle splash of your paddle and the chirping of unseen birds. On either side of you, narrow strips of land, lush with vegetation, seem to float on the water. These are the Chinampas. Now, you might be tempted to hop out of the boat and do a little jig on one of these islands, but I would caution you because, while they are incredibly stable, they are also very, very muddy. I am speaking from experience, and frankly, my shoes are still traumatized by the experience. You trudge onto one of these amazing pieces of agricultural architecture. It's basically a raised bed built in a shallow lake or wetland. The Aztecs, or Mexica as they called themselves, were ingenious engineers. They started by building rectangular enclosures using interwoven reeds and branches. Then, they filled these enclosures with layers of mud, decaying vegetation, and other organic matter dredged from the bottom of the lake. The result? A fertile, nutrient-rich plot of land, perfect for growing all sorts of crops. The water surrounding the Chinampa constantly irrigates the soil, providing a steady supply of moisture and nutrients. It's like a self-watering garden bed, which, let's be honest, is something my perpetually parched houseplants could seriously benefit from. The Aztecs started building these things way back in the 13th century. That's right, while Europe was busy dealing with knights and castles, the Aztecs were engineering these sustainable masterpieces. Talk about ahead of the curve. And they needed them. The Valley of Mexico, where Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, was located, was a densely populated area. Think of it like the world's first vertical farm, just, horizontal and floating. Clever, right? Necessity is the mother of invention, as they say, and in this case, the necessity was feeding a growing population in a resource-constrained environment. Now, here's the cool part, the Chinampas weren't just about growing food. They were also a crucial part of the ecosystem. The canals surrounding the Chinampas provided habitat for fish, amphibians, and other aquatic creatures. The plants helped to filter the water, improving its quality. And the Chinampas themselves acted as a natural flood control system, absorbing excess water during the rainy season. It was a win-win-win situation. Which is better than a win-win, right? You kneel to get a closer look. You can see that the soil is dark and rich, teeming with life. Earthworms wriggle through the mud, aerating the soil and breaking down organic matter. Tiny insects flit around the plants, pollinating the flowers. It's a miniature ecosystem, buzzing with activity. And, Surprisingly, it smells earthy and fresh. Not like the bottom of a murky swamp, which, I must admit, was my initial expectation. You gently brush aside a large leaf, revealing a ripe tomato, plump and red. The Aztec diet was primarily plant-based, heavily relying on the Chinampas. They cultivated maize, beans, squash, tomatoes, chilies, basically, everything you'd need for a killer taco night. Historians still argue whether the Chinampa system alone was enough to sustain the entire population of Tenochtitlan. Some believe it was supplemented by other agricultural practices and trade. But one thing is certain, Chinampas played a vital role in feeding the city. Some historians estimate that they could produce multiple harvests a year, making them incredibly productive. Forget your window box herb garden, this is serious food production. Think about this for a second, a system of agriculture that not only produces food but also enhances biodiversity, purifies water, and controls flooding. Sounds pretty good, right? In our modern world, where we're facing climate change, environmental degradation, and food security challenges, the Chinampa system offers some incredibly valuable lessons. I mean, who knew that ancient Aztecs could offer so much advice to our modern world? Certainly not me, before I started researching this. But let's face it, applying the Chinampa model directly to, say, downtown Manhattan might be a bit of a logistical nightmare. Imagine trying to build floating gardens in the middle of Times Square. The traffic alone would be a nightmare. I imagine the yellow cabs would float, too. The core principle that makes Chinampas so wonderful, however, is closed-loop system. Nothing is wasted. Organic matter is recycled back into the soil. Water is conserved and reused. Waste becomes a resource. This is a concept that we can absolutely apply to our modern agricultural practices. We can reduce our reliance on synthetic fertilizers and pesticides by composting and using natural pest control methods. We can conserve water by implementing efficient irrigation systems and capturing rainwater. We can reduce waste by recycling and composting organic materials. You carefully pluck the tomato from the vine. It feels warm and heavy in your hand. You take a bite. The flavor is intense, bursting with sweetness and acidity. It's unlike any tomato you've ever tasted. You think to yourself, this is what real food tastes like. Furthermore, the Chinampa system highlights the importance of integrating agriculture with the natural environment. Instead of trying to dominate and control nature, the Aztecs worked with it. They created a system that was both productive and sustainable, mimicking natural ecosystems and supporting biodiversity. In our modern world, we can learn from this by promoting agroecology, a farming approach that seeks to integrate ecological principles into agricultural practices. This can involve planting diverse crops, creating habitats for beneficial insects and pollinators, and reducing the use of chemical inputs. It's like turning your farm into a thriving ecosystem. Of course, not everything about the Chinampa system is perfect. It requires a lot of manual labor. Building and maintaining the Chinampas is backbreaking work. And while they are incredibly productive, they are also vulnerable to environmental changes, such as droughts and floods. You wipe the tomato juice from your chin. The sun is starting to set, casting long shadows across the canals. The air is cooling down, and the sounds of the day are fading away. It is probably past time to head back. The mosquitoes are coming out, and believe me, those guys are relentless. I spent the entire afternoon itching after I came out the first time. You would think they had never seen blood before. However, let us not forget that the Aztecs didn't have access to modern technology or machinery. They relied on their ingenuity, their knowledge of the natural world, and their willingness to work hard. And they created a system that not only fed their people but also sustained the environment for centuries. Think about that for a minute. Centuries. In a world where so many of our modern technologies are designed to be obsolete in a few years, the Chinampa system stands as a testament to the power of sustainable design. The future of agriculture requires a paradigm shift. We need to move away from industrial agriculture, which is often environmentally destructive and unsustainable, and towards more sustainable and resilient systems. The Chinampa system offers a glimpse of what that future could look like. It's a reminder that we can feed ourselves while also protecting the environment. It's a reminder that sometimes, the best solutions are the oldest ones. You step back into your canoe and begin to paddle back towards the shore. The setting sun paints the sky in hues of orange and purple. The water is calm and still, reflecting the colors of the sky. You feel a sense of peace and contentment. As you glide through the canals, you think about the sustainability lessons you've learned today. You think about the ingenuity of the Aztecs and their deep connection to the natural world. You think about the challenges facing our modern world and the potential solutions that lie in the past. As you turn toward the bank, you can almost imagine the ghosts of Aztecs past, smiling at you across the waters. "We knew what we were doing," you can almost hear them whisper. And you can too. You finally climb out onto the dock, ready to head back to the hotel. You make a mental note to purchase some seriously good mosquito repellent tomorrow, and also to wear something that you would not mind getting muddy. On the whole, however, you cannot wait to explore more tomorrow. Okay, so, not quite bedtime here, I suppose. But go stretch a bit, and get ready to keep going. Okay, settle in, get comfy. Maybe grab a lukewarm cup of chamomile tea, because, let's be honest, who remembers to drink it while it's still hot? We're going to drift away and ponder the amazing, the utterly ingenious, and slightly soggy world of Aztec floating gardens. Imagine, if you will, the Valley of Mexico, centuries ago. It's a vibrant hub, a bustling metropolis surrounded by shimmering lakes. You trudge along a muddy path, the humid air heavy on your skin. The calls of exotic birds echo in the distance, and the scent of blooming flowers hangs in the air. Not a bad commute, right? But this isn't just any garden, it's a Chinampa, a floating garden, a man-made island brimming with life, bobbing gently on the surface of the water. You're not exactly treading on solid ground, and that's the whole point. These weren't just some clever landscaping tricks, these were life-sustaining marvels. The Aztecs, ever resourceful, figured out how to turn a watery landscape into an agricultural goldmine. Historians still argue whether the Chinampas were invented out of sheer necessity due to land scarcity or as a display of ingenuity and power. Probably a bit of both, right? Like inventing the spork, practical and a statement. The basic idea is deceptively simple. You weave together reeds and branches to create a floating platform, anchoring it with stakes and trees. Then, you pile on layers of nutrient-rich mud dredged from the lake bottom, basically, superpowered compost, until you've got a fertile, floating garden bed. And the best part? The water constantly irrigates the plants from below. It's like a self-watering planter, but on a monumental scale. Think of it as the world's first hydroponic farm, a slightly less sterile, definitely more organic version. These floating gardens were incredibly productive. They could yield several harvests a year, providing food for the ever-growing Aztec population. We're talking corn, beans, squash, tomatoes, chilies, the whole enchilada, quite literally. The Chinampas allowed the Aztecs to become a dominant force in the region, supporting a complex society with sophisticated art, architecture, and, of course, a rather intense religious system. Speaking of which, imagine the pressure on the farmers. If your harvest failed, you weren't just letting down your family, you were potentially angering the gods. Talk about performance anxiety. Now, here's a quirky tidbit. Some believe the Aztecs even cultivated axolotls, those adorable, perpetually smiling salamanders, in the canals surrounding the Chinampas. Not just as a food source, but also, allegedly, to help keep the canals clean by eating insects and algae. Talk about multitasking. It's like having a miniature, amphibious Roomba, but way cuter. Though I bet they weren't so cute when they were on the menu. But the story of the Chinampas isn't just some ancient history lesson. They're actually still around. In Xochimilco, a borough of Mexico City, you can still see and even visit working Chinampas. You can take a trigenera, a brightly colored, gondola-like boat, and glide through the canals, admiring the floating gardens, buying fresh produce from the farmers, and maybe even enjoying a little mariachi music. It's a living testament to the ingenuity of the Aztecs and a reminder that sometimes, the best solutions are the most sustainable ones. You float along, the gentle rocking of the boat lulling you into a peaceful state. The sun warms your skin, and the air is filled with the earthy scent of the gardens. It's easy to imagine what it was like centuries ago, when these floating islands were the lifeblood of a thriving civilization. One mainstream historical fact is that Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, was built on an island in Lake Texcoco and relied heavily on the Chinampas for its food supply. It's like the Venice of the New World, but with way more tomatoes. Of course, it wasn't all sunshine and hydroponics. The Chinampas required a lot of maintenance. The canals needed to be dredged regularly, the platforms had to be repaired, and the crops had to be tended. It was backbreaking work, but the rewards were substantial. And let's not forget the occasional earthquake. Imagine trying to maintain your floating garden while the ground, or rather, the water, is shaking violently. That's one way to make sure your crops are thoroughly watered, I guess. And here's a slightly darker, maybe even fringe, tidbit. Some historians speculate that the Chinampas were also used for ritualistic purposes. Perhaps certain crops were grown specifically for religious ceremonies, or maybe the floating gardens themselves were considered sacred spaces. It's easy to see why. They were, after all, a symbol of the Aztecs' ability to create life and abundance out of seemingly nothing. It's like a botanical cathedral, but instead of stained glass, you have zucchini blossoms. Historians still argue whether the Chinampas could truly sustain the entire population of Tenochtitlan or if they were supplemented by other agricultural methods. It's a question that involves complex calculations of crop yields, population densities, and trade networks. I'm starting to doze just thinking about it. But regardless of the exact details, the Chinampas remain an impressive example of sustainable agriculture and a testament to the ingenuity of the Aztecs. They showed how to work with nature, rather than against it, to create a thriving ecosystem that benefited both humans and the environment. And in a world facing increasing environmental challenges, that's a lesson worth remembering. It's a reminder that sometimes, the best solutions are the ones that are rooted in the past. You can almost feel the weight of history surrounding you, the echoes of the past whispering in the gentle breeze. The image of the Aztec farmers tending their floating gardens, their faces etched with determination and a deep connection to the land, or rather, the water, lingers in your mind. It's a powerful image, a reminder of the resilience and creativity of the human spirit. I wouldn't mind a floating bed right now. What a nap that would be. Wind down. The light is softening now, the sharp edges of the day fading into a gentle blur. The vibrant colors of the Trajineras seem to deepen, reflecting in the still waters of the canals. You can almost feel the coolness rising from the water, a gentle balm on your skin. Let the images of the Chinampas drift and settle in your mind. Picture the lush greenery, the vibrant colors of the flowers, the gentle rocking of the floating gardens. Feel the connection to the past, to the ingenuity and resilience of the Aztec people. The world slows. The sounds of the day recede, replaced by a quiet stillness. Just the gentle lapping of water, the rustling of reeds, and the soft whisper of the wind. Breathe deeply, letting go of the day's worries and anxieties. Allow yourself to be carried away by the peacefulness of the moment. Imagine yourself drifting on a Chinampa, surrounded by lush vegetation, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. Feel the gentle warmth on your skin, the soft breeze on your face. Let go, and drift, drift, drift. Sweet dreams.